And we're in the middle of a series called Blind Dates. And it got me to pondering a question this week. My wife had a baby on Monday. And she is awesome, the baby. And my wife is awesome too. And I started to think as I was preparing this sermon, which was incredibly difficult this week because I was having to take care of the kids and do the things that Sarah normally does. I was doing that plus the things I normally do, which is just I'm a terrible mom, guys. I'm terrible. Can we give it up for all the moms in the house? Man, they're incredible and we love some moms. But I started to think about this question, okay? And bear with me. Do you have a least favorite law? There's a law in government and you're I hate that law. What a way to start a sermon. You know, it's yeah, actually my least favorite is murder. It's all right, guy. Now, my least favorite law is found in red lights. I hate red lights. Is anybody with me? I wish they would just cease to exist. Just all the red lights. And then it would be terrible traffic all the time. It would be terrible. And actually, one day I am going to run for office. Would you vote for me? No, okay. No, guy. We're going to make red lights great again. It's going to be incredible. And so red lights, though, if I were to ever run for office, this would be my slogan. It would be, together, we can run red lights. And that has not been tested on anyone, y'all the first ones, and it's terrible, okay? This is why I'm not a politician. And here's what I would do, is before 7 a.m., all the side streets would be a flashing red, and all the main drags like Kingston Pike would be yellow lights all the way down. I'm telling you, before 7 a.m., I ought to be driving down Kingston Pike free. That's an incredible idea. That is a vote-worthy idea, okay? I think it is anyway. Now, you might have another law that you wish to get rid of, and we'll talk about that another day, okay? But the law with red lights, that's a law that was instituted by our government. Government loves instituting laws, right? Now, there are some laws that have been instituted by the government, but then there are also some laws that have been instituted by God. These are things that, take it or leave it, they're not changing. They are what they are. Things like gravity. You can't change it. It just is what it is. Another law from God that has been instituted that you can't change and do anything about is male pattern baldness. Can't do anything about it. Your boy is also going through a little male pattern baldness, so I'm right there with you, Trent, okay? And my wife is watching right now. She's going to love me anyway, right, babe? I hope you comment yes. Okay, so now here's the deal. Laws, whether they're instituted by the government or by God, laws create safety. They create order. Laws create predictability. There is an order that comes about with the law of gravity. Here's the order. What goes up must come down. Goes up must come down. There's a safety with the law of gravity. You can only really jump about as high as your body can carry you on the way down. Unless you're Zion Williamson, in which you can jump 10 feet in the air and your body can never catch you. Your boy is laying on the court more than he's on the court, okay? It's tough. There's predictability to the law of gravity. When you jump off a building, don't try this at home, when you jump off a building, you fall. Wouldn't it be crazy if there was not predictability? So sometimes you flew and sometimes you fell. It was just dependent on the mood of gravity. Doesn't work that way. Gravity, you either fall, you just fall. Now, the only place in your life or in mine where the laws instituted by God can be broken is in your dreams. It's the only place. Some of y'all, you got dreams where you soar. You're just flying away from something. Like, that's how you fly. Some of you can just sprint in your dreams. You're like the Flash, real fast. That's what it sounds like in your dreams too, right? Some of you got nightmare kind of dreams, and so it's always like a clown shows up, and it's just like, coming after you. My wife, Sarah, she can fly in her dreams. Anybody else can fly in their dreams? Let me hear from you. Okay, let me show you how Sarah flies, because Sarah doesn't fly like Superman. You know how Superman, he's just like, whew. Sarah doesn't fly like that. Sarah flies like this. She does this weird push thing with her arms. She goes, and she's got like a bad guy chasing her or something, you know, Chucky coming after her, and Chucky doll is coming after her, and Sarah's going. And so here's the deal though, watch this. If I were to jump off of this sub, if I were to jump off of this sub and I was trying my hardest to fly, I'm not gonna fly, right? Prove it? Okay, all right. Y'all, I'm 30 now, so I could definitely tear an Achilles or something, but here we go. Okay, all right, it doesn't work. I was so close. Did you see me? I got a little lift in me. It was great. Eric Coleman over here, and watch this. There are laws that no matter what, you can't break them. Gravity is a law from God. He instituted, you cannot break it. And I believe today that there are some laws of marriage. There's some laws of marriage that you cannot break. They will work for you and with you, or they could work against you. And it all depends on how you use the laws that have been instituted by the Lord. How are you going to use the laws? Unfortunately, we got a lot of people, in relationships and in marriages, and they are in a fairy tale dreamland. They're not living in reality, and so, watch this, they are assuming their dreams are going to come true, and when they don't come true, they just bail on the relationship. They bail on the marriage. See, these 4 laws of marriage that we're going to talk about today come straight from Scripture, but also, man, these 4 laws of marriage, they weren't instituted by some man. They weren't thought up of by a dude in the corner of a coffee shop thinking, oh, these will be great. They were actually instituted by God. And any law that's been instituted by God is what it is. You can go with it or you can go against it, but it will not change. And the good news today is that they weren't developed by man, they were developed by our God. And what I know about you, whether you're married or not, is that you want a marriage one day or today. You want one that thrives, not just survives. You don't want to just survive and make it through another day. And man, I made it through one more day of marriage. Nobody wants to wake up 40 years later having made it through marriage. They want to wake up 40 years later having thrived in marriage. And in Genesis chapter 2, we're going to pick up where we left off last week. But I find it interesting that when you're dating, you and I, we intuitively live out these laws. Because they're not just laws of marriage, these are laws of love. In fact, at one point or another in your life, you will fall into love. And these laws are how you fall into love. And so today, if you find yourself out of love, these 4 laws are the way you fall back in. And it's interesting how we will do these things intuitively while we're dating, and then you get married and the guy says, I got her. She's mine. I ain't got to brush my teeth no more. That's not a law. That's a 5th law. Brush your teeth every morning. The girl may say, hey, I got him. I don't have to do anything any more. And what happens is we will work so hard to get something, and then once we get it, we will take it for granted. I don't know if you noticed this before or not, but man, you worked so hard to get that job, and then once you got the job, it's like you just kind of took it for granted. I think that's a great example with Heart and Soul Church. You have people all the time, man, it's incredible. We've doubled in size, by the way. This is just a side note. We don't always share this kind of thing, but doubled in size over the last year. And yeah, that's great. You can celebrate that. That's great. And we have people giving their life to the Lord every single week, raising their hand saying yes to Jesus, which is why we exist, to Phil Heaven from Knoxville. And what can happen is you can come to Heart and Soul and you can say, man, God is so good and he's up to something here. And I love what God is doing. And then you can get used to it and take it for granted. And I don't know about you, but I've been here every Sunday since we started, and I don't want to take for granted what God is doing in this place. Now, the same thing can happen, though, in your marriage. It can happen in your relationship. You know people that have done that. They went on a weekly date at one point, and then it just kind of dwindled out. He opened the door for her, and then he slammed the door on her. He bought flowers every time he went to the grocery store, because that's the place you get flowers, guys. You get it for $9.99 at Food City. And you take it out of the wrapper so she doesn't know where it came from. And you put it in a vase before she sees and says, baby, these are the roses that you deserve. I just outed myself. Okay. Hopefully Sarah is not watching now. And what we do is we take our spouse, our significant other, we take them for granted. These 4 laws are how you don't take them for granted. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, it says this. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united, or the King James Version, old school, says that the man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they become one flesh. Adam and his wife were both naked. Or some of y'all might say naked, but I say naked, okay? And they felt no shame. They felt no shame. If you want a marriage that not just survives, but it thrives, you have got to live under the laws of God. And I believe we see 4 laws of marriage right here in these 2 simple verses. If you're ready for the laws of marriage, say I'm ready. Law number one, if you're taking notes, law number 1 is the law of priority. The law of priority. The scripture says, leave your father and your mother. Newsflash, Adam didn't have a father or mother. First cat to come on the scene. This is written for your benefit and for mine, to leave your father and your mother. Here's the deal. Your new priority when you come into a relationship in marriage, your new priority is no longer your family, your immediate family. Your new priority is your spouse. And if something else comes before your spouse, your marriage won't work. Marriage only works in first place. There are no participation trophies in marriage. It only works in first. And if you want your marriage to work, you've got to put it in first place. That's why when I walk in the door at my house, I walk in the door and I see my 2-year-old Kobe. He's sprinting towards me. I see my 5-year-old Cash. He's just kind of reluctantly walking towards me to give Daddy a hug. I see Sadie Ray over in the crib. I have got to consciously learn and teach myself, because I do love my kids so much. I love my kids. I have got to consciously teach myself that when they walk towards me, I got to stiff arm Kobe. I got to hurdle over Cash. I got to Heisman pose up on Sadie and get to Mama, because Mama deserves the first kiss. Why? Because Mama is the priority. And for some of you, that hit you the wrong way. You know why? It's because your child is your priority, not your spouse. And what your kids need more than anything else in the world, they don't need you to love them more. They need you to have a healthy marriage. Because your kids are not, your future kids, they are not going to see a healthy marriage on MTV, baby. Is MTV even a thing anymore? Like, they're not going to see healthy marriages on Facebook. Have you seen marriages on Facebook? Man, there's this one girl that somehow I'm friends with her. I have no idea who this chick is. And I guess I need to clean out my Facebook. I don't know who this is, but yo, she and her husband are going through it, baby. Like, maybe I should pray for her. You're not going to see healthy marriages anywhere else. Your kids need to see you in a healthy marriage. Somebody needs to say amen to that. They need to see you in a healthy marriage. They need to see that your spouse is first in your life. And honestly, like, God is a God of priorities. He's a God of priorities. God wants your first fruits, not your leftovers. First fruits, not leftovers. I love meatloaf. Anybody else love meatloaf? Oh man, it's just me, West Tennessee boy, okay? I love meatloaf, and my favorite kind of meatloaf is the kind my mom and my wife make, and it's got like an inch of icing on top, okay? Like, just, yeah, if you don't eat your meatloaf with icing, you're missing out, okay? It's incredible. It's got sugar and brown sugar and all kinds, it's icing, okay? And my meatloaf turns into like a dessert, and it's incredible, and I love it. What I hate is leftover meatloaf. Don't nobody want to warm up a slab of meatloaf. It just is gross to even say. I don't know if I should say that in church. It's gross. And what some of us do is we give God our leftovers rather than giving him our first. Some of us will give our spouse our leftovers rather than giving our spouse our first. See, Jesus says, seek first my kingdom, and everything else will come about. Seek first his kingdom. It's why God instituted, I believe, it's why he instituted the tithe. You know what has the biggest stranglehold over most people? It's money. By far the biggest stranglehold. It's money. And what you do with your money says a lot about your priorities. It's why I believe God instituted the tithe, that before I pay my mortgage, before I pay my bills, before I pay my car note, before I save any money for myself or buy more Bitcoin, I am going to give to the Lord. It sets my life up. See, your priorities reveal what's most important to you. It's a fact. And what you and I have to do in our marriage, in our relationships, is we have to prove our priorities. When Sarah and I first got together, when we first started dating, I used to be somewhat of a gamer. Like, I would destroy you in 2K, and I still will to this day. And hit me up, and we'll play, and I'll destroy you. So when I first got married, Sarah made me get rid of my gaming stuff. And this is Sarah's excuse. She says, if you got time to play on the Xbox, you got time to spend with your family. And I'm like, okay, all right, I guess I'll get rid of that, proving my priority. Now I like download an Angry Bird app to like play while I'm pooping. You know what I'm saying? You do it too, okay? Come on. And Sarah has like a spidey sense, and she just walks in and is like, I know you're not pooping, you're playing Angry Bird. Okay, I'll delete it, I'm sorry. Whoa, okay, like, you gotta prove your priorities. You know how you prove your priorities? You prove your priorities with time. You ought to write that down. With time. Time is the currency of relationship. It's the currency of relationship. And man, can we just be really honest today? It is so hard to prioritize our time when we are constantly walking around with our work. And if you're looking down, I'm holding my phone up. It's hard. It's hard to prioritize our time when we are bringing around our work with us constantly. And technology, man, it is an incredible servant, but it is a terrible master. And what was intended to be a resource for you to grow your business or a resource for you to grow in your whatever has, for many of us, turned into a master that we're enslaved by. You got to prove your priorities with your time. And honestly, sometimes you have to, as a husband, let me talk to you for a second, you need to protect your spouse from some good things. Do you know good things can get in the way of great things? Your business is a good thing. You ought to work hard. You ought to work as hard as you, I hope you have some ambition. I think a little ambition is healthy, that you go and you're trying to work hard to do something with your life, to make a difference in our world. But that good thing can turn into a bad thing if it's put in priority over your spouse. As a pastor, I love my job. I love my job. I love what I get to do. I love, basically I write a book report every single week, and then I have to deliver the book report to you in a way that is somewhat engaging, and otherwise you would never come back. And I love what I do. I love leading. I love everything about being a pastor. But Jesus told Peter, as Peter was getting ready to pastor the early church, he said, feed my sheep. And then Paul in Ephesians chapter 5 says to love your wife. And as a pastor, I am to feed the sheep, I am to equip you for the doing of ministry, and I am to love my spouse. And if I'm not careful, I love my church so much, I love my job so much. If I'm not careful, I will love my church and I will feed my spouse. I will love my job so much that I give my leftovers to my spouse. And let's be real, the same has happened to you. You love your job so much. You love what you get to do. It's incredible. You're grateful you get to do it. But if you're not careful, it will take priority over your spouse. And as soon as anything else takes priority over your spouse, the marriage is not going to be healthy. It's not going to be healthy. If you want to prove your priorities, you got to prove it with time. You got to prove it with your attitude. If time is the currency of relationship, attitude is the energizer of relationship. Nobody wants to be around somebody that never wants to be around. And what's interesting is that you need time and attitude, because if you roll in and you give all the time in the world and you have a terrible attitude the whole time, they would rather you not show up. Now, the other side is true too. If you roll in and your attitude is incredible every time, it's just you're the best life of the party, but you give your spouse 5 minutes before you go to work and 5 minutes before you go to bed, they'd rather fight with you than hang out with you. It's both working together. It's the law of priority. Number 2 is the law of pursuit. Scripture says that they were united, or they cleaved. And this idea, it's to work with all you got. Work with all you got, everything. It's this idea of pursuing. And the reality is that marriage only works if you work it. Marriage only works if you work it. And the question is, how do you work on your marriage? I've got 3 ideas for you to write down, okay? The law of pursuit. Number 1, you pursue your spouse by serving them. By serving them. My wife, she loves when I roll into the bedroom and I get this little itty bitty, lacy, super sexy, little piece of clothing. It just turns her on. Actually, I brought it with me. Let me just show you. It's this. It's so stupid. She loves when I roll in with this. You know why? Because that means that Daddy was at the kitchen sink doing dishes. There ain't nothing sexier to my wife than when I do the dishes. Hey, babe, I do the dishes. Well, you just had baby. So you can pursue your spouse, watch this, by serving them. By serving them. Guys, why did you stop opening her door? You don't even know, man. You know what would be so serving to your husband? Ladies, let me just open up, because he's never going to tell you this, okay? What would be so serving to him is to look him in the eyes and saying, you're doing a great job. Because us guys, we just want to hold it together and have a mustache and go Vols and we got it, I don't need nothing. I'm incredible, wings, sports, beer, But you know what your spouse needs? You know what your husband needs? Your husband needs you to say, thank you. He needs you to be grateful. And here's the reality is that some of you ladies, you make a lot more money than him. And you got joint bank account, but when he lays that card down, just pretend like he did it. Just thanks, babe. That'll make him, that will last 2 months for him. He will wash 100 dishes for one thank you. Guys, serve your wife, man. You know what would be incredible is while she's in the shower, make the bed. I am just helping you out today. And if you're not married, do it one day, because she will walk out of the shower and she will die. Just lay on the floor, dead. Now, before you do this, up her life insurance. So if she does die, you know what I'm saying? You good to go, baby. Pursuit by serving. Number 2 is pursuit by dating. Dating. When's the last time you went on a date? We got the single guy over here talking back. Ladies, listen. Some girl, please go ask Trent Keeler out on a date. That's the most desperate man for a relationship I've ever seen. And it's incredible. I love you, bro. And listen, you pursue them by dating. When's the last time you went on a date? Married people. Or if you're in a relationship, when's the last time you went on a date, man? Like, I'm not talking about like you just went out to dinner. I'm talking about it was a planned date. It was intentional. I'm talking about you took a shower. Not like a shower before you went to work and then you went and got her after work. I'm talking about you took a shower for the date. And you're not wearing a hoodie, the same hoodie you wear every day of the week. You got some cologne on. Your hair is fixed. You ain't got a haircut for the date. And it doesn't have to be Fleming's every time. It can be McDonald's, but was it planned? You ought to be dating. That's why actually during the rest of this series is running it's running to Halloween, okay? So we're going all the way through October with this series. That's why in this series we're doing a brand new thing, hashtag Heart and Soul Dates. Okay, watch this. Here's what we're gonna do. The challenge for you, if you are dating or you are married, or maybe you're single and you're like, I wanna mingle with her, all right? Well, then go ask her out, bro. Like, the Lord's not asking her out for you. Some of you guys just need to grow up and go out. And actually, let me pause here. Not in the notes. Okay, let me pause here. If you don't have the strength to ask her out on a date and accept that rejection for what it is, you don't have the strength to lead her spiritually in a marriage. Man, that was good. Okay. All right, so anyway, is go on a date, post it on social media, hashtag this, okay, this is real, and the most creative dates that we see, we're gonna buy you a date to Fleming's the next week, okay? Now, one per service, calm down, all right? Like, I'm not trying to break the bank here. But why? Why are we doing this? Also, that sounds like a waste of money. Well, listen, brother, we believe marriages are important. And good churches, healthy churches are built on healthy marriages. And you know how healthy marriages get formed? You gotta pursue them by dating. Number next is pursue them by sexing them. Healthy marriages include healthy sex. Let me read scripture because it'll do better than me. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 says this in verse 2. But since sexual immorality is occurring, okay, it's on the screen. Each man should have sexual relations with his own wife. Thank you. And each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife. This is on your job description. And likewise, the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Verse 5 is so important. Do not deprive each other except perhaps by mutual consent, so important, and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Now, I don't know how you're reading that, but it sure sounds like sex is a big deal. And the problem is that so many of us in Christian circles especially, we get all middle school when we talk about sex. We talking about sex. That's what we do. Some of y'all were fighting it back too. You were like, should I laugh? No, you shouldn't. That's weird. Sex is not a dirty, bad thing. It's good. It's good in the context that God created. You know what Paul's talking about here? He's talking about marriage. Sex is good in marriage. If you're married, you know what I believe this is saying? You ought to be having sex. If you're not married, you ought not be having sex. See, this is not a license for abuse. This is really a gift for use. Let me say that again. This is not a license for abuse. It's a gift for use. It's what you as a spouse, this is what you give back to your spouse. It's what you give back to your husband, what you give back to your wife. In fact, Paul goes as far to say, man, you ought to be doing this, because if not, like, Satan's gonna get up in there and tempt you. I believe that if you're not having healthy sex, if you're not coming together and having sex, I'm not gonna even try to tell you how often, okay? I don't know. But if you're not having sex often, that Satan can use that to tempt you for an affair. That's what the scriptures say. Sex is not bad. It's incredible within the context that God created it. Quickly, the law of partnership. They become one flesh. There's no space for dominance in marriage. And let me just read this straight off of my notes because I don't want to mess it up. Marriage is not about independence. It's about interdependence. In fact, marriage is brutal on selfish people. Like, some of y'all found out you were selfish after you got married. It's like, frick, man. I don't like going to Chick-fil-A. I prefer Wendy's. And we find out we're selfish. In fact, if you want to be independent in your life, let me just encourage you today. If you're single today and you love your independence and you don't ever want to give that up, please don't get married. Please don't get married, because marriage is a partnership. In fact, I like to say it this way, and you can tweet this, all right, and give me credit, is marriage is about sharage. That's so dumb. If you tweet that, say Tristan said it, not me. Pastor Jimmy Evans, he's a great teacher on marriage. He says this: anything I will not give to you as my spouse will create problems in the future. And if you've been married long enough to hide some stuff from your spouse, I promise you, you know that's true. Anything I will not give to you will create problems in the future. Sarah and I, we're not perfect, but man, we are partners. And we fight, we'll yell. We're not a perfect marriage. I think you ought to be fighting a little bit. But man, we share everything. We are partners in crime. Let me give you some practical stuff. Man, share a calendar. If you're not sharing a calendar with your spouse, it's a big mistake. Like, man, we live and die on our calendar. We share our calendar. We share our bank account. We share our kids most of the time. We share our shirts, because all the girls, it's like in style to wear a shirt that's 4 sizes too big, which is just so annoying, because I want to wear the shirt that has prints on it. And Sarah's always trying to wear the shirt with prints on it. And I'm like, give me my Prince shirt back. Like, get your own shirt. Sharing is caring. Tweet that one. It's a partnership. It's a partnership. In fact, there is no plan B. Plan A is partnership. There is no plan B. I was told when we first got married, like, divorce shouldn't even be a part of your vocabulary. Get rid of it, out the back of your mind. There is no plan B in marriage. Plan A is partnership. And you say, well, yeah, but what if? Stop right there. There is no plan B. There's no, yeah, what if? Yeah, but. There is no plan B. Is it any wonder that so many marriages are ending so quickly and so often when we are planning the ending from the beginning? We walk down the aisle to say yes and I do. And in the back of our mind thinking, yeah, well, if Jimmy doesn't work out, there's Johnny. We can't have another plan. It's a partnership. Jimmy Evans continues and he says this: I'm not going to decide without you. Partnership. I'm not going to decide without you. And I think this is just a good practice in general. If you're partners with someone, you want to make decisions together. When Sarah and I decided to plant Heart and Soul Church, it was Sarah and I decided. I didn't just wake up and say, hey, I think it's the middle of a pandemic and it's a great idea. I know you just had a baby, but great idea. In September of 2020, we're going to move to Knoxville. I don't care if you want to go or not. And we're going to start a church. Didn't go down that way. We did it together. We partnered together. We made that decision together. Now, I believe I will be held accountable and I am responsible to lead my family spiritually. I will be held accountable for that. But most of the time, 95% of the time, I'd say, decisions should probably be made together. That other 5% where God tells me to do something, we'll talk about that in a future week as well. You might say, okay, fine, maybe we should share, but why don't we like to share stuff? Well, because sharing is hard. Have you ever seen a 2-year-old try to share? It's terrible. My 2-year-old, he hates sharing. And you know what marriage does? It turns us back into 2-year-olds. The one married person is laughing. And because it's like, okay, well, toilet paper, do we go over or under? Fight. Okay, all right, whoa, okay, guys, whoa. Fight about this later, okay? Do we wash our clothes on cold or on hot? Do we use top sheets or do we not use top sheets? Do we use a sound machine or no sound machine? Turn the fan on, okay. And you know what's funny is like all of those arguments that Sarah and I had, I lost them all right? So, all of them. Our fights are so annoying too, because Sarah, she's annoying, bro. She's not here, I can talk about her. And I'm just kidding, I love you, babe. Sarah, though, she gets mad 4.5 seconds. That's all it is. She's just like, blow up, and then, hey, where you want to go to dinner tonight? I was thinking maybe we stop on by Cheddar's. And it's like, okay, well, I don't want to talk to you. I want to be mad, not for 4.5 seconds. I want to be mad for 4.5 weeks. Like, golly. When I was growing out my hair because I'm extraordinarily insecure about my bald spot, just throw that out there for you. I asked her, I said, should I shave my head? I mean, not shave my head. Should I grow my hair out or should I go back to the fade? And she was like, I don't care. I was like, well, you're my wife. I want you to care. And that turned into an argument, which is so dumb. Most marriage fights are dumb, right? I mean, like 95% of the marriage fights are dumb, and the other 5%, like the cops show up. It's like, wee-hoo, wee-hoo. Partners in crime, you both go to jail, right? It's great. But can we be honest for just a minute about our fights? We often fight because we would rather win the argument than win our spouse. I have a tendency in me, I want to win the argument. I want to be right. But often when I'm right, I end up not being right with her. I want to have a marriage where I win my spouse, not just win an argument. And the word the Bible would use is the word submit. We don't like that word. But Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21, let me remind both husbands and wives, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. It's this idea of a race to the back of the line. How can I serve my spouse more? Last but not least, and super quickly, is the law of purity. They were naked and felt no shame. And often when we think about purity, we think about sex. And yes, this is sexual, but it is more than sex. It's primarily about intimacy. Intimacy. And sex and intimacy, they're not the same thing. They're different. In fact, you could be in a marriage and you could have all your sexual needs met and none of your intimacy needs met. And what you need and what I need is we want intimacy. After sin entered into the world, they found fig leaves. They began to hide from one another. Why were they hiding from one another? Because ultimately they were insecure. And when insecurity goes up, intimacy goes down. When insecurity goes up, intimacy goes down. If you want more intimacy with your spouse, you have got to rid yourself of insecurity. You know how you rid yourself of insecurity? You tell your spouse all the things you're insecure about. Your struggles, you're open, your heart is just laid out bare for her and her alone. She knows your struggles. She knows the things that you dislike. Sarah knows all the things I'm insecure about. And I'm telling you, it is a grocery long list of things I'm insecure about. And Sarah knows them. And when Sarah is more cognizant of my insecurities, our intimacy goes up. In fact, your sex life will get better, again, in marriage. Your sex life will get better when your intimacy life goes up. When your intimacy gets better. In fact, one guy, he said it this way. Intimacy is into me see. If you want intimacy with your spouse, they have got to be able to see into you. Into me see. That nothing is hidden. I'm not trying to hide behind fig leaves. It's all open for her. And you know how you do that? You do that by trust. You trust your spouse. Well, Austin, how do you trust? How do you know if I can trust them? Well, this is not an answer you're gonna like. You don't know, and the way you trust is you trust. That's it. And I think we look no further than the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus to see how you trust. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane and he looks up to his Father and he's praying and drops of blood are dropping from his face because he's so stressed out. And Jesus is looking to heaven and he's saying, Lord, Father, if there's any other way that people's salvation can be made other than me getting on the cross, God, would you show another way? Would you do something else? Nevertheless, your will be done. I trust you. I trust you. Do you trust your spouse? But more importantly than trusting your spouse, do you trust the Lord? Because before you're able to love your spouse and trust your spouse and have intimacy with your spouse, you have got to understand the love of our God. That while you were still a sinner, Christ Jesus died for you. That you weren't worth it. But you were beautiful and worthy in His eyes. He loved you, and He gave up everything for you. With every head bowed.